It's mind-blowing to me that Black actresses have to fight to have Black hairdressers on set for us.
Essentially, I got to set, and it was very clear that no one could do my hair. And so they just put a hat on me.
So then I had to go outside of the movie, find people in New Orleans to braid my hair. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I cried about it.
So, hair. Recently, Black actors have been sharing their stories about what it's like backstage and the sorts of inequalities and mistreatment they faced from backstage professionals, specifically for the purposes of this video, hairdressers, and in some cases makeup. Even now, when we're seeing more and more diverse casting, there's still a need to talk about the stuff that happens away from the screen, away from the cameras, that we may or may not know about, and the sorts of working conditions that the majority of actors face, and not just like the big stars that we know. Hair is like one of the first things you notice when you look at a person, and in film it can be used as like a creative device to build a character or to create visual interest and just like look good. But for some reason, a lot of producers, directors, whoever is responsible seem to just ignore or glaze over the fact that, hey, we need the Black actors to look good too. Like, look at them, you know? And they end up showing up on screen in absolute shambles and become Twitter memes, and you know the gist. I first came across this issue when I saw an article about Monique Coleman, who played Taylor in the High School Musical franchise, and she was talking about why her character on the movies wore headbands. And the reason was that she had to hide her hairline because the hairdressers did such a terrible job, so they had to make her wear headbands the whole time, and they sort of wrote it into her personality trait and wrote it into her wardrobe, and it kind of became like her personality. And while someone might say, well, that's some intense problem solving skills, I think that's just extremely lazy. Like, come on, she deserved better. Everyone else on the show got to wear their hair naturally except the one Black woman on the, like, that's sus. Very, very sus. But basically from there, I went into a rabbit hole of tweets and articles and videos of actors detailing their negative experiences with hair and makeup professionals. Something that seems like it's an obvious thing to provide on a freaking movie set is just completely ignored because it's a certain sect of people, and it's very baffling. Black actors are often scarce on screen, a problem which has been detailed quite extensively and will continue to be detailed extensively until fully addressed. But more important to the point of this video is, when they do appear, what do they look like? What condition are they in? If they're not in some sort of caricature or stereotypical role that's meant to be the opposition for their white counterparts, then what do they at least look good? Like, do we at least get to enjoy them looking nice on a big screen? Like, why bog them down in more ways than one? Media is meant to be an visual experience where we escape into a different world, and if I don't even get the chance to see someone looking glamorous on screen because somebody doesn't want to learn how to do black hair, then what is the hope for me in my regular life every day? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Black actors shouldn't have to worry about getting on set and wondering whether there's going to be an appropriate hairdresser who's seen hair like theirs before and isn't just like hovering over them wondering what the heck to do with it. It must cause a high degree of just anxiety going into the workplace, whereas everyone else just gets to just show up in the dress down knowing that they're going to be treated 100% to the best quality. You know, the Black actors deserve to just rest in the confidence that they will look just as good as everybody else. But at some point I also found myself wondering, well, why don't they just bring their own hairdressers and barbers to set? Which then brought up some other points, that a lot of the times when Black people are on set is usually for minuscule roles, and there's usually very few of them. So producers aren't going to be so eager to spend the money for them to have that sort of special service, so they'll just work with the hairdressers that were already available for the main leads, who are usually white, usually only know how to deal with straight hair or, you know, less curly or coily hair. And not a lot of actors in those small roles will have the money to pay someone to come onto their set. Like, think of someone who's just got their first gig and they're probably already having to pay for several expenses for themselves because they got a very bad deal, and now you're expecting them to pay for their own barber. I don't think that would make sense. Even if you could afford to get your own barber, there's also a lot of red tape around that too, because hairdressers in the film industry have to be aligned with certain specific unions, which unions, great for workers' rights, great for healthcare, and that, especially in the US, which, by the way, I'm speaking from a mostly Hollywood center just because research purposes it's a lot easier to find information about America than anywhere else because media. So yeah, if you're not aligned with those certain unions, then it's going to be very hard for you. They make it very difficult for people to get into those unions, and if you're not in one of those unions, you're not allowed to work on the sets. So that's why a lot of Black actors have to then go out of their way to get their hair done, go away to a barber who's like way offset, and then come back and maybe they're late, or they have to start their day extra early instead of getting as much rest as maybe their other co-stars are getting. It's a whole thing. It's a mess. The resistance to just like having people who are like they don't even have to be Black. They just have to be people who know how to do Black hair, but there is no desire. They don't want people to learn how to do Black hair, and it's also reflective of how in training a lot of the hairdressers don't even get to learn how to do hair that isn't straight, that isn't white adjacent. It's very worrying. I have to wonder, like, this sounds like so much work to make someone else's life so much harder instead of just making it simple and bringing someone on set and cutting someone's hair and braiding someone's hair. Why? And like most things, this issue can be probably somewhat traced back to the big old, the thing that I can't say because of the algorithm. For example, the fact that the white wives of plantation owners were allowed to just order a slave's hair to be shaved off because they thought she was too pretty and they thought their husbands would be enticed. I know, disgusting. Indicating that they knew the dehumanizing nature of this, like to just remove someone's crown, as it is often referred to, and they wanted to keep themselves looking like the highest standard of beauty. And in some respects, it's very easy to say that that is still happening now, and that is still happening in this system where they're making it so difficult for people just to have their hair done for a show that will be seen by millions of people probably. It might be a stretch, but come on, a lot of the times, especially when it's like Black women characters, they're just often just placed in like the opposition or like as a backdrop against the pretty white protagonist. Not always, but a lot of the times, right? And of course she's gonna have janky hair, but no one cares because she's not the main girl. She's just the best friend who we don't even know her background or her family or what's going on. Nothing. So it's not that much of a stretch to see this sort of intent, right? I'm not hallucinating. I feel like I have to say this before someone says it for me, but of course, this isn't the case for all sets. This did happen a lot in the past, still is happening in some cases now, but things are getting better. But it's important to recognize how far people have come, and if people are still coming out and talking about this, then it's clear that it's probably a bigger issue than they're letting on. Of course, people aren't going to want to call out the exact films when this happened to them or the exact people who did certain things to them, because then you'll get blacklisted and won't get any more opportunities. And we already know, like I've mentioned earlier, that there are very few opportunities already available for Black actors, so of course they're going to be a little hesitant to say some things. Even if it's not as bad now, it is still really important to have these sort of discussions and realize just how far reaching these levels of like oppressing or dimming the light of minority people go, that even the people in the highest, what seem like the highest ranks of society, the most visible people in society, can't even catch a break. And even though we're like slowly getting to the point where different hair textures are getting accepted and stuff, and even though some are still revered more than others, and there's still a lot of mess going on with that, like, let's talk about why is there that trope where like you only see Black women take out their weaves and show their natural hair when they're in distress and when they're crying and when they're angry. Like, what is that about? Like, we need to talk about that. As long as people keep talking about these sorts of things, eventually it'll be too loud for producers to ignore, and they'll be forced to take notice and make their spaces, their backstage spaces more inclusive, just as they're trying to make their on-screen presentations more inclusive. They need to take notice.
When you go into the hair and makeup trailer with somebody who has never done or touched a black head before, and they don't know how to handle your hair because it is a different texture, different grade, and then you got to sit there for hours, somebody playing in your hair and making you look all the way jacked up, and then you got to go on set, worry about how you looking. Or a makeup artist does your makeup, your face is different than your rest of your body. Mentally, what does that do to somebody who's trying to do their job?
But yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I always like reading you guys' comments because it's like, even when I don't have anything additional or necessarily constructive to say, I'm always like, wow, everyone is A, so nice, and B, so smart. I'm so lucky to have all of you here. And thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see all the other videos I've featured on the poll, because I will be making them at some point, probably most of them, and make sure you subscribe. Have a nice day, and I will see you next time.